Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the news you missed. I'm Paul Brooker, and I'm joined by Warren Thornton. Unfortunately, Charlie is still recovering, so he's not going to be joining us today. But our wishes are with him that he makes a speedy recovery. I know the audience are missing him. Well, what can we say about the news in the last 24 hours? It's the 10th of September 2025, and it's almost like the world's governments are in total and utter chaos, Warren.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And the French one, of course, is the one where we've got to start. Macron, of course, Emmanuel Macron has sunk beneath the waves, shall we say. Once again, he's in dire trouble because he's lost the vote by 364 votes to 194, which means that his austerity package and the money that was going to Ukraine is on hold at the moment because his Prime Minister Bayrou has had to resign. And you have some news on the new Prime Minister, don't you, Paul?
Oh, I do indeed, Warren. And you can understand why the money's been frozen because when your economy's going down the toilet and someone says to you, let's give a few million to another country, people are like looking around going, is this the land of crazy? I totally understand. But anyway, guess who the new Prime Minister is going to be? Macron has appointed Defence Minister Sebastian Lecornu as the country's new minister in charge of everything. Wow. I don't know how you feel about that one, Warren.
Well, you couldn't make it up. I mean, this is the guy who wants to go to war with Russia until hell freezes over. It was possibly the obvious pick. But this is a guy, once again, Marine Le Pen can't, is banned from running for some strange and inexorable reason. He can't make a deal with the so-called far right. He can't make a deal with the so-called far left. So he has to keep picking globalists and people who want to go to war. And of course, it's going to make him even less popular.
Oh, I think it will. I think it will, Warren. Macron's days are numbered. Everybody knows that. He's driven the country into the ground. They're adamant, him, Starmer, and the rest of them, they want to go to war with a fighting force that is far superior. And I'm sorry, I am a patriot of Britain, but facts are facts. We've only got one aircraft carrier that works. We can't afford to run the rest of our navy. Our troops don't even believe in our own country anymore because they're selling us out hand over fist, giving illegal economic migrants housing over British veterans and natural born Britons. They're all crackpots. They want to see us all in the ground, fighting for lost causes, and dare I say it, for bankers and the rest of them. Well, my next story, Warren. The White House is moving to freeze nearly $5 billion in foreign aid. President Trump's administration has asked the Supreme Court to block spending approved by Congress after a federal judge ruled the money must go forward. Solicitor General John Sauer argued the ruling threatens the separation of powers and forces the executive branch to act against this judgment. Since returning to office, Trump has slashed most USAID programs, saying taxpayer dollars should be spent at home, not abroad, including in Ukraine. Well, Warren, one thing you, Charlie, and myself have done a lot of digging into is USAID and UKAID for that matter. The money has not been going where it's supposed to be going. It's been doing that wonderful circle of, dare I say it, contributions to political campaigns after going through a few washing machines.
Yes, absolutely. And while we're talking about washing machines, we have to have a talk about Nepal. For all the things that have been acting behind it, and once Trump finds out, I think he's going to get absolutely crazy. The Nepalese government has been forced to stand down and back down, obviously, from all sorts of things that have been happening where they were banning social media. Now, the problem that we have with this is we've had a good dig behind the scenes. Now, the Committee for Journalism, which is literally, shall we say, run by a think tank which involves George Soros and everything else. Most of the riots have been put forward by a young group from a group called Shazam. Now, this is an NGO operating in Nepal. And of course, we know that China and India are now best friends. what better than to have turmoil, either somewhere like Indonesia or even perfectly situated right in between the two, is in Nepal. Now, when you do some digging into who this Shazan group are, this is mainly the group that has caused all the rioting and the burning, and in fact, the death of the wife of the former prime minister, the foreign minister, and everybody else who have now backed down from this, quite obviously, because they will burn your country to the ground. The World Forum Democracy, which is sponsored by the European Union, and also the other ones who have put huge amounts of money into Shazan, are the National Endowment for Democracy, which we all know is a front for the CIA. So once again, America not getting on with China and India, wanting, so they decide to try and overthrow the government of Nepal, and it looks as though they've been successful.
Well, overthrow the government of Nepal, or is this as people standing up and showing us that we do have a voice? Because they've ousted the prime minister.
Yes, they have ousted the prime minister, but here's the problem that we have, Paul, is the actual groups that they've used to do it are massively linked to America and to various think tanks inside America. The Committee to Protect Journalists, for instance, when you go and look at their funding, and it's the Committee to Protect Journalists who were the first ones who said, no, we won't subscribe to, should we say, the new rules you want to put down for media. So they said no. Then everybody else followed suit, Facebook, Google, and many others, and suddenly the government gets overthrown. Stinks to high heaven, I'm afraid.
Yeah, do you know what, Warren? After that information, I'm now sitting here going, "Oh, this definitely sounds like a regime change." Well,
Yes.
my next story, and you've got to laugh at this one and also be slightly concerned. Sweden's newly appointed health minister, Elisabeth Lann, collapsed during a press conference on Tuesday while being introduced. Flanked by Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson, Lann hit her head on the lectern but received immediate medical attention from officials and security personnel. She later returned briefly, explaining the incident was due to a blood sugar drop. No serious injuries were reported, though the press conference was cancelled. Lan had just been appointed following the sudden resignation of her predecessor. This isn't a good look, is it, Warren?
No, it isn't. When you consider that Sweden have a huge immigration problem, that of course they've just come out with the numbers with the amount of sexual assaults on 15-year-old Swedish girls, which represents 19% of these girls have been attacked by immigrants, and you suddenly have the Swedish health minister suddenly collapsing at the lectern. Sweden is unraveling as we speak. Somewhere else that is unraveling, and the shall we say Netanyahu turning around and saying we were wholly responsible for the Qatari attacks, of course, and nobody else knew about it. Oh, really? Au contraire. So we have this, Paul Brooker. We have the the Qatari Air Force, the UK Air Force, and the American Air Force all airborne while the attack was taking place. And of course, literally the Qatari Air Force Base is where the Americans are based. Now, the Americans, Israel, are saying they didn't know anything about it, and America are saying they didn't know anything about it. But it is strange that all three of those jets were in the air. And just only 3 days ago, CENTCOM, the Americans, flew to Israel to have a top secret meeting. There we can see Brad Cooper with Lieutenant General Ayol Zamir. They had a top secret meeting only 3 days ago. I'm sure they knew nothing about it whatsoever, Paul.
Well, looking at that information, Warren, it's starting to stink a little bit, isn't it? And also, does this not look like the Saudis now are going to start hating Israel? Israel's going to be surrounded by a lot of people that don't like them. You know, they are not neighbours either. This was quite far away when Israel tried to take out the Hamas leadership by the sounds of it, because Hamas have released a statement and said you missed effectively. So,
Yeah,
this was a high risk move, and Qatar are not going to be happy that Israel are dropping shells, or missiles, I should say, on their sovereign territory.
yeah, and of course Qatar pretty much owned by the American Air Force. But here's the problem: they didn't tell the Qataris, or Israel didn't tell the Qataris. But the Hamas are now coming out and saying that they were trying that there was an effort to lure them to the building. They didn't go because that was made by the Office of the United States, saying that they wanted to negotiate a peace deal or carry on with the negotiations for the peace deal with Hamas. Hamas didn't go to the building, even though they intimated they were going. They didn't go, and quite rightly so. Why would you? After the last time America turned around and said, let's talk peace, and then drop bombs on Iran through Israel again.
Wow. Well, my final story of the day. President Trump has officially ended US cooperation with the European Union on policing so called disinformation. The Financial Times reports Washington has withdrawn from Biden era agreements with 22 countries after shutting down the Global Engagement Center earlier this year. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the center was misused to silence Americans under the previous administration. The move is part of Trump's wider push to dismantle institutions he calls vehicles for censorship, including defunding the US Agency for Global Media. The White House says the shift is about protecting free expression. I'm celebrating this one, Warren. This is
Yeah.
fantastic. This is the US saying effectively Europe, UK, France, you name it, they are censoring free speech. There's no if, buts, or maybes.
No, absolutely right, and you're completely correct. And of course, when you talk about free speech all over Europe, you look at Keir Starmer the other day, for instance, who decided he was four or five police officers to arrest some guy just for calling somebody a muppet. Even Mark Rowley, the Met Police chief, has now come out and said we are sick of arresting people on Twitter who are making comments on Twitter. You need to take us away from this because it is eroding all confidence in the police to do their job.
Yeah, and when you've got the head of the police force starting to turn against you, that means if you lose the confidence of the police force, there's no one to put their heavy boot down on your throat.
No, absolutely that. And what my final story is something that we've been saying for a long while, Paul, and it looks like it's coming true. Now, very simply, while we're talking about the police, we've long since seen fighting age males arriving on the shores of Europe with no passports, no children, no women, then going into hotels, migrant centres, and then being moved into army barracks, which we said was going to happen a couple of years ago. Now, something we said that you can't put these guys in the military and you can't jab these people under the European Court of Human Rights. What they can do is join the police force, and they've been doing that in droves. In the German police force, 55% of the new cadets taken into the German police force cannot speak German.
Wow, what a statistic indeed. That is phenomenal. What's what's going to happen? Because if they can't speak German and they're policing German citizens, oh, this sounds like there's some very nasty things to come for Germany. Very
Yeah.
nasty.
And I think the same might be the same over Europe, because if we suddenly go to war, we can't send anybody who's an immigrant under the European Court of Human Rights off to war, but we can send the indigenous population, while, of course, should we say the migrants suddenly sign up to join the police force, Paul Brooker?
Doesn't it sound like population replacement, doesn't it?
Doesn't it just?
Well, that was your news you missed on Wednesday, the 10th of September 2025. God, this month's flying by. Lots going on out there. Government's falling, dare I say it? Who knows what's coming in the next few days, but we will definitely keep you informed. And for all those out there who want to find out more, head over to charlieward.com, sign up for the Insiders Club, and we can talk more freely every Wednesday and Saturday. Because I can tell you now, mainstream media, these platforms only let us say, dare I say it, what's on the surface and not what's really going on. So all that's left for me to say is to take care, God bless, and see you all soon. Bye now.
Goodbye.